Hello, pretty kitty.
You're muted.
Yeah. How's Maine?
Oh, we're not in Maine. We're in Wareham, Mass.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay, weren't you in New York earlier or something?
Yes, we were in New York. We were in Maine. Now we're in Wareham with all the grandchildren at the beach. So it's very nice.
Okay, fantastic. Not too much of a noisy gaggle.
It's pretty noisy gaggle, except, including the 1-month-old baby that is quite loud and makes her wishes known. And and the middle-sized children, yep. So
Yep, I hear you, especially with that newborn, because we had her up at the camp last week, and she was fussy.
Yeah,
just a wailing. So.
Well, they have one trick. And it's worked for millennia. Makes people jump around.
It's true.
It's effective. It's very effective.
Anything to shut them up here.
Yeah. Oh, you want the food? You want what else could you possibly want here? But we'll get it for you.
Get your clean diaper taken care of too.
Yeah.
Too, if I had a dirty diaper.
So anyway, well, it looks like we are all here. So I think, is it 7 o'clock? It is 7 o'clock. We can open this meeting at 7 p.m.
Okay, let me get this done here. Hang on a second. Bear with. Gotta figure this out. There it is. And record to the cloud.
Recording in progress.
Very good. All right. So, welcome to the Town of Richmond Planning Commission. This is our meeting for August 19th, 2026. Looks like we have a quorum. Mark Fausel, Chelsea Brooks, and myself. Fossil. I'm sorry.
What did you say?
Fossil. And we have Tom Astley from MMC TV. Thank you for recording the meeting. Keith Bourne from the Planning Department. And Trevor Brooks is one guest. So we're all here. Sounds good. Mark Fossil. Yes. All right. So first we'll review the agenda and we can have public comment, which is Trevor, on any non-agenda items. I'm assuming that his comments will be on the agenda, but anything's fine. Any modifications to the agenda? Trevor has no comments right now, so thank you, Trevor. All right, so that being the case, we'll proceed with the posted agenda. And for our next agenda item, we'll look at the minutes of our August 5th, 2026 meeting. They were posted earlier in the week. Any corrections or additions, changes to those minutes? Minutes of 8/5/26.
Nope.
Okay, not hearing any. We will accept those minutes into the record as written. They were useful minutes, actually, for me to read over. So moving on to item number 4 on our list, our agenda, we want to try to make some progress on the stormwater issue. And I think there are some questions that are specific that we need to resolve in order to try to do the best we can with these documents that I'm continuing to work with the 3 documents. Basically, the Section 5 of the zoning regulations and the subdivision regulations, which is the permitting process, in order to put things in those documents that are specific directions to the people who are making the decisions about zoning permits. And then Section 6.17, the new section that we're adding, which is all the information basically that we want to put in about stormwater management and erosion protection. These will give us the authority to continue to do what have been internal permitting decisions, but it's actually going to put in writing that you can do those according to the zoning and that people will have this information up front. And there's a big educational component because understanding that this is all pretty new to people, we just want to make sure that we're educating people, beginning to introduce this concept that we need to be managing the stormwater. So what I would like to do is to look at the memo. Keith, if you could share that on the screen. And we're going to go through these items, and I am hoping that if people, something's happening on my screen. Oh, okay. If people have alternative proposals that they wish to make, that they have some language so that it's not just like a suggestion, you could add this in, but it's like, what language would you like to see in there?
Can everybody see this?
All I can
Yeah.
see is you.
I can see the
yeah,
document. Chelsea, can you see the document, hopefully? Trevor?
Yeah, I can see it. Sorry.
Okay, great. Are you at the town center? Just out of curiosity?
No, I'm at home.
Oh, okay. Very good. Okay, so, and the way that the updated documents that from looking at the last couple of meetings, what was said, I have altered those. Section 5 and the subdivision regs are in red line form because they have to be changes from our current regulations, which people are going to need to see all the way through. When we go to the select board, et cetera, they're going to want to see how the changes compare to the current regulations. So that's why there are tracked changes to those documents. Section 6.17 was a document that we wrote. Keith and I wrote it, mostly Keith reviewed it. It already had some tracked changes in it, and putting tracked changes from tracked changes is very confusing, I find. So the document basically is just changed. So I'm hoping that you have read it over, and the changes we will talk about because they're on the list of things to talk about. So I'm hoping that we're going to be able to agree or come to some understanding of what further information we might need on these very specific points. Mostly what is happening is our current regulations, Section 5 and the subdivision regulations, are telling the DRB and the zoning administrator we need to have plans for EPSC and stormwater. They need to be there. And then section 6.17 is the information that they need to look at. So, all right. So the first point is that I don't know that anybody is going to have a problem with this, but so the thresholds of the state permits is an acre of disturbed land with some other little caveats, or half an acre of new impervious surface. After that, beyond those thresholds, you have to get state permits. So our requirements are also going to apply, but we don't have to be as concerned about looking at the details because they're going to be captured in the state permit plan that people will have to have. So does that agree with other people's understanding of this? I did have someone ask me, oh, so the regulations don't apply to the state permits, but they apply to anything that we define above a certain size that we're going to talk about, including and all the way through the state permits. But we are hoping that the state is going to require certain things and more things than we're requiring. So I'm hoping that nobody has a problem with that. Does anyone have a different understanding of that?
So the note I have regarding that is in reference to, are we going to be requiring them to include their state plans with their, because you in number 1 you say our requirements would apply to those larger projects as well, which is what you just said, but would be captured in the state permit site plan. So are we going to require them to include their site plan for their state permitted project?
No, I don't think we're going to. Are we going to? At some point we're going to require it, not at the beginning of the project in the planning phase. Is that right, Keith?
Well, I mean, if there's a state permit that's associated, I'm assuming I'm off my, I'm not off my meds at least. You guys can hear me, in other words, right?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. All right. If there's a state permit involved, it's not going to be anything that my office is going to handle. It's something that DRB is going to handle. So it's going to be part of that regardless.
And why do you say that? If there's a state permit, the DRB would handle it.
Because if there is that much, when you have a project that large, it would typically be a commercial project or a subdivision. Now, if you want me to make sure that we get a state permit that is required regardless for our permit for somebody to clear some land, a half acre of land or an acre of land, that's fine. I mean, we've never had that happen, but we certainly could require that.
Well, I'm more so thinking like, I guess what I mean is like, if we are saying that this stuff is going to be covered in the state permit site plan, but we're not getting anything on file at the town level, then how do we have any, I guess, like proof, for lack of a better word, that they're complying? Because as you said, Virginia, in your memo here, our requirements would still apply to these larger projects. How do we have any proof that they're like, I mean, presumably if they have a state permit and if they've met the state requirements, they will also then blanket meet our requirements. However, if we don't say, hey, if your project is this, state level, you don't need a special sort of plan for us. Just you are able to then submit your state site plan like that. That's a acceptable substitute, I guess, is the way that I'm reading this. So like, I would think we would want that on file.
Well, they will have to provide a site plan for the DRB because they will be presumably DRB projects. So they will have a professionally designed site plan. So, I suppose actually the way our regulations are written is there's only a low threshold for the application of section 617 and the requirements. There's only a low threshold. So they, on their site plan, I think they would be required to show those things.
Yeah, I mean,
But-
if you,
Go ahead, Keith.
yeah, I mean, if these triggers eventually get promulgated, the 10,000 and 20,000, they get promulgated and they're going to automatically be reviewed by the DRB. Well, obviously you're going to have a site plan with that. If you have to, if the state requirements kick in or are triggered, obviously if we have promulgated our rules, that site plan would hold also. I mean, they would have to be at least similar, I would think. That makes sense. I mean, we have a lower bar than a higher bar than the state.
So anyway, it would be, I would say it would be on our, if we're only proposing a lower threshold, not an upper threshold, they would have to show on their plans things that met our regulations. But I think what I was getting at here was that there's going to be further review of it at the state level, and they will need to get a state permit.
Okay.
So, Trevor.
Go ahead.
Did Mark have something?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Just, I guess the main thing is that the state threshold for impervious surface can be 1 acre total if it's redevelopment or expansion. So there are more, which then means more project could be captured that would be at the town level, but not trigger a state permit. So there's potentially more permits not at the state level that the town would then be the sole person responsible for ensuring things are followed. And I also wouldn't rely on the state to, at least on construction permits, to actually require any kind of enforcement. They have said repeatedly that they're understaffed. They have one person for Chittenden County, and they have a hard time even visiting the sites to see what they do. So it's going to end up, if any kind of compliance issue comes up, it's probably going to end up having to be the town that does something. So even on large projects, because they'll still have to follow the town rules, and the town rules are similar in what you can and can't do to the states. Just to be aware that relying on the state's not necessarily a good fallback. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the state is short-staffed, and so are the towns really short-staffed.
Yeah, that's why I want to be clear that this is going to be a burden on the town either way. They're going to have to do something probably, even if I don't think relying on the state as once they get really big, the state will take over. It will still probably fall on the town. So I think just the zoning office would want to be aware of that, and the planning commission when they make the rules that they're going to end up creating work for the zoning office with these, and probably cannot rely on the state to enforce things.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
All right. So anyway, they will need to get a state plan, and we have said that in our requirements for what it's worth. So, all right. So the next question is, do you want there to be a baseline threshold in our regulations below which an applicant does not have to do anything essentially for erosion and stormwater? And the reason that I think this is probably a good idea to have a low threshold is for political reasons, because I think it's going to make people think that there's a level below which, if it's a small enough project, you don't have to do anything burdensome, like read section 6.17. It would be good if people did, but anyway, that's just my feeling. And so what has been proposed is the 600 square feet of disturbed, 600 square feet of new impervious, and it's new rather than total because we're not aiming to regulate what already exists, but that's, open for discussion. And anything on a 15% slope.
But that's a 20 by 30 disturbed area, which isn't unreasonable for disturbed areas. I mean, perhaps even in the village, that may not be an issue for disturbed, but 600 new square feet of impervious surface on an eighth of an acre lot, third of an acre lot, that's a significant potential impact.
So you're suggesting that that number be lower?
I am.
Okay, what's your suggestion?
I don't have one. What do we think?
Anybody else want to weigh in on this question?
Yeah, sure. I would say that I prefer, as opposed to like the blanket threshold where you're below these thresholds, I think I prefer specific exemptions, which is kind of the same thing, but a different way to get to the end point. And when I say I prefer specific exemptions, I mean like perhaps there's sort of like what Mark's saying, exemptions could be based not just on the amount of new impervious, but the amount in relation to your district and your overall lot coverage. I think that if we want to give a blanket baseline and have it apply to everywhere, as Mark said, it's going to in my opinion, need to be lower than 600 square feet. But then when I expand on that and think about, the districts outside of the village, I'm like, having it be, a 15 by 15 shed or whatever that works out to be, or 10 by 10 shed as the exemption in the village, that seems too low for the AR or other districts.
Yes.
So that's, I think, I do agree with some exemptions and allowances. I also like the idea of like, maybe we have a low exemption or there's like a one-time exemption situation where to ease people into the thought of this, everyone gets, some sort of get out of jail free card one time, and then regs kick in, and then those regs are specific to your district and your lot coverage and sort of that kind of stuff. I don't know.
Okay, so what are you suggesting exactly? I mean, I understand the concept you're suggesting, but what I'm really looking for is you to say something that is exact, that is the language that we can put in there.
Okay, 1 second.
How about something like 400 if the lot size is less than half an acre?
Okay, you're talking about 400 of impervious new, right?
When you're finished, yeah.
Okay. So, 400 new impervious.
20 by 20. It's a small garage. It's a
4 lots less than what? 1/2 acre, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Less than 1/2 acre. And what about for lots that are bigger than 1/2 acre?
That's where it gets tricky. Because really 600 square foot on 100 acre flat land.
Where's that?
There's a couple left.
Yeah, in a floodplain.
Yeah. They're just
I would suggest, if you want to go down that road, that you get district specific. Obviously, Mark had brought that up earlier in the conversations back in March, and so where we tried to want to do one size fits all, but that's difficult, obviously, with infill development, and that is really the focus here, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So, what would you suggest, Keith? In the village,
Yeah.
400 square feet new impervious within the village boundaries or whatever the water and sewer district, and
I think it would be all districts with the exception of the AR. This is just a knee jerk right now. All districts except the AR, and then you would have a blanket threshold for that. And in the AR, it's 600 or whatever it is you guys are comfortable with. It's really hard to put a round peg in a square hole when it comes to these smaller as opposed to a larger lot. And we've had this conversation before. But if you want to go down this road, I would get district specific, to be honest.
Yeah, I
think
mean, we
most-
want it to be simple. It has to be simple.
Yep.
Jonesville could have some large lots.
I mean, there's large lots right up on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
True. Maybe Jonesville is mostly commercial, so anything that happens in Jonesville is going to go to the DRB if it's a commercial project, obviously. So.
Well,
you know,
that's the Jonesville Commercial District. I mean,
yeah, I mean, there are Jonesville Cross on the other side of the river. Yeah. Yep, you're right. And they're in the AR.
so if we were going to say 400 of new impervious for all lots in districts outside of the AR, then in the AR, 600 or more than that, bigger than that? 1,000? I mean,
That 1,000 would be fine. I mean, in the AR. Yeah, but there are small lots in the AR also.
I'm gonna find the zoning map.
So you might want to just do it as instead of a district. Now that I'm working.
Yeah,
through
I don't necessarily like the district thing because I think people are gonna deal.
Size. I think size is what matters here.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't think people are gonna like the district thing simply because of some of the wonkiness with some of our districts.
Yeah.
And it's people are gonna then say, you know, that they don't agree with the district they're in or they don't agree with this or that. Whereas if it's size no matter what district you're in, it's based on size. And so we could even have it doesn't have to be one or two, it could be three. We could have 400 for lots up to this size, 600 for lots up to this size, 1,000 for lots up to, greater.
That's logical.
yeah, well, I mean, the only thing that I have against doing that, first of all, we're making it more and more complicated, and we really have to keep this simple. But secondly, we have had comments on this subject before that suggest any size really should be aware of these stormwater things, And if you don't have much impervious in a big lot, you're going to have a pretty simple plan. You don't have to make a very complicated stormwater management plan because you have a lot of infiltrative ground and, to have it just have a level that we can say there is a level below which you don't need to worry about this, but have it be pretty small. And then, anyway, go ahead, Chelsea, if you want to suggest 3 levels, that would be another way of doing it.
Hold on once. There we go. Something was going on here loud. I mean, I see where you're coming from, Virginia, and that if you have a lot of land, it's easy to sort of treat things in theory, but then if we're not, I don't know. So if I was to say levels, I don't know, maybe if we're doing up to for half an acre 4 and then 600 for an acre and I don't know 800 or 1,000 for greater than an acre. I'm not really sure. But then when you think about that, you think about I have greater than an acre, and if I put 1,000 square feet of impervious on my lot here, it would be pretty significant.
Yeah. I mean, well, kind of in my mind, that's why I kept coming back to having some level, but having it be pretty small level. Because even those people in the AR need to, I mean, in a way, they need to be at least as cognizant because they're the ones who have the trees that maybe they can be saving and,
So what's our requirement now? for a site plan, period.
There is no requirement for stormwater or erosion and sedimentation.
No, I understand that, but what about a site plan?
For a site plan, everybody has to have a site plan. Everybody who applies for a zoning permit has to have a site plan. And we're going to come down to the part later in this memo about, does it have to be professionally designed or can it be applicant designed? That's another question. But everybody has to have a site plan of some sort, which shows the boundaries of the property and the building, where the building is going, the building envelope, and, they can put where they're going to leave the trees. If you have a 10-acre parcel, then show that you're going to leave all these trees.
Right. So that's kind of where I'm going. So we got to do the site plan anyways, other than going through the state guidance document there for stormwater and erosion control. There, you pretty much already have to put together a site plan for everything, but all you need to do is add an extra form. It may not necessarily warrant at this point. We're not saying this warrants a remediation system and stormwater collection. You just have to factor in these other issues in that module. And how long did you say that takes to go through, Keith? Not that long, right?
As far as what? You mean processing?
Yeah, to go and create a stormwater erosion control components of the site plan.
Yeah, I mean,
well, you'll see when we come to section 6117 what is going to be required. I mean, let's say you're out there and you have 10 acres, you're on a 15% slope. Those people are going to have to do more work in terms of putting up the erosion fencing, and the bigger the amount of impervious surface, the more work they're going to have to do. So I don't know. I kind of think that will come naturally.
Right. Maybe we should be looking at 6.17 before we come up with the math, and I can refresh my mind on what exactly we're going to entail, additional effort we're gonna have force on people putting up a garage, based on what 617 says is going to be involved, before we come back to question 2.
Trevor?
I just want to point out that the thresholds here do they need a construction level management plan and then a separate, what's the trigger for the stormwater management plan? So I think you should separate those out, because like the impervious surface only applies to the management plan, but the disturbance is the construction. And the slope, I think have been doing only in the construction part. So I just want to make sure they're two separate triggers for which one requires some sort of management. Yep. And I just want to make sure you separate that out. And I think
it's separated out in 6.17.
Right, but in the way this is worded for proposed, it starts with construction, then does post stormwater management, then goes back to a construction threshold. So just make sure that how you discuss it handles both of them.
Well, this is just a shorthand version of the question. It's not going to be written like this in the document, but this is the question. Is there a low threshold that we want to have? So far, what has been suggested is a basic low threshold like this that's pretty low for these things, which will be written differently, written in its correct place in section 6.17 in the permitting sections. Or do we want to have 3 levels or 2 levels or some other scheme that's fairly simple that is a threshold below which you don't have to plan for erosion and stormwater. You still have to have a site plan, because everything has to have a site plan. But you don't have to have components of that relate to erosion and stormwater.
Acreage is probably just the easiest, because that's the easiest to find. The total lot coverage is also something you can calculate fairly easily, but then that requires more work. But that would then potentially apply to, like, if it's a large vacant 1 acre lot, it's a lot different than if it's, covered by 50% of impervious already. So, but I think just doing like just acreage. If you're looking for super simple, would just be 1 acre, maybe over 5 acres and under 1 acre, or just do 1 acre above or below. Would be fairly easy for people to know which one they're fall into. And in general, comments in town have been that just for impervious surface purposes, that like lots of small projects in the hills or even bigger projects in the hills over time add up and then create problems lower down in town, which has been brought up at the Conservation Commission.
So that sort of speaks to a low threshold.
Yeah. Because 600 square feet doesn't seem that big, but if it's 600 square feet and everybody in the 20 house road on like Valley View or whatever, which is just close to me, so I just picked that one, that adds up to a lot of impervious surface that then builds up over time and affects people downstream. Mm-hmm. So if it's, I mean, it's not a lot, but it's a lot when you could compound it.
Right.
But it wouldn't take a lot for the 600 square feet to be managed on site in places in the HDR or A&R, because they generally have enough land to easily account for that impervious surface. In town, it's very difficult, and because there's no space and there's not stormwater capacity in most of the town.
And, you know, even with 600 square feet of new impervious, you may be bumping up against lot coverage numbers,
right,
on tiny lots. So, I mean, these numbers to me is like a compromise. It's something low that you can get below if you really work at it. But on the other hand, really, there should be something that makes everybody do this work.
Is lot cover, like total lot coverage after whatever is being proposed, something that's on the permit now? I don't remember like percentage. Like I don't remember if that's on there. Like if someone says I'm going to build this 1,000 square foot whatever on my property, does it ask you to then report what your total coverage would be at that point? Or is that something that they'd have to calculate out separately if we required that? I know it's on some of the subdivision things, but not, I don't know if it's on the permits for just a person.
Yeah, lot coverage is intrinsic to the permits. That's one of the first things we look at.
Okay, so then that would already be calculated. So if you wanted to use acreage, and also they had a low lot coverage already, which I think, and what I sent last week was less than 50% of the total district's maximum lot coverage, then they would be more likely to have more space and be less impactful on their neighbors.
Right.
So you're suggesting 50% of the maximum lot coverage.
But then they could be exempt at a easily exemptable because they have less impact. And then maybe because if you're at 50%, you're running out of space already, and you're probably going to cause more issues, and maybe they don't get an exemption. That's just an option.
I like that. Like maybe we could go with 300 square feet for less than a half acre and 600 square feet for greater than half an acre. Or, you know, if you have more than 50% lot coverage, or this will result in more than 50% lot coverage, you have to have a plan.
Okay, so we're talking about impervious surface now, right? Not disturbed.
Yes.
Okay, so you're good with the 600 square feet of disturbed? Or do you want that to be also related to the amount of lot coverage?
Disturbed soil is a temporary thing.
Exactly.
You can have piles, you can have a little bit of mounding, whatever. So yeah, 600's whatever.
Okay, so 600.
I mean, I would almost go higher on that one. But when you when it's said and done, a long-term established stormwater runoff, I think is far more of a factor than erosion control for, 6 months.
Well, erosion control is very important, though.
Yeah, it is.
And it's also a lot easier to manage. So, yes. I mean, I think everybody should have to have, if they're going to disturb the soil, they should have some controls. I mean, it may be as simple as a fence around the area.
Yeah, we'll get to that, but yeah. So that's my suggest is if it's less than half an acre, it's 300 square feet. If it's more than half an acre, it's 600 square feet. And the overarching is Trevor's 50% lot coverage. If you hit 50% lot coverage, no matter what size your lot is, you've got to put in the site plan for these two, right?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think whether you need both of those things for impervious, both
Well, you could have
acreage size and or 50% of the lot coverage. I mean, of the maximum lot coverage. So if you have, let's say you have a 1 acre lot in a 1 acre lot in an area where there's a 60% lot coverage. So you could put up to 30% of the size of the lot into impervious surface, which seems like kind of a lot, but
that's what our current regs say though, right? So we're not fighting that.
well, is that what our current regs say, Keith? I mean, our current regs have a lot coverage number, and I guess that's all they have.
What's that?
There's nothing else.
Make it too complicated. I mean, why does somebody get penalized when they have 50% lot coverage? They meet their 50% lot coverage, and that just seems like extra work to me. I don't think it's necessary.
So what is your suggestion here, Keith? To have a minimum or not to have a minimum? To have the lot coverage be the minimum?
The lot coverage is the minimum, yes, or the maximum.
So what is your suggestion for a lower threshold that have to do erosion and stormwater control?
I think we've already discussed that over and over, 600 square feet.
For disturbed and for new impervious?
Well, new impervious, no, I don't know. 600 square feet is fine with that too. I think that just makes life easier. It depends on where you're going with this though, and I don't know where this is landing, quite frankly. If you're going to say that we have to design a professional plan for 600 square feet, I don't know where we're going with this, to be honest with you. I mean, what stormwater are you looking for between 600 square feet and 10,000 square feet?
Well, we're just trying to set the baseline, the low threshold for nothing right now.
Right. So I would stick with 600. That's only because it's tied to the CO.
And the 15% slope?
Yeah, that's fine too. That would require.
It has to be below a 15% slope where you're going to disturb the land.
Yeah, you would require a professional plan for any disturbance on 15% slopes regardless. It's 20% now, but.
Yeah, we're making it 15.
I just don't think you're making things easy here. And I mean, maybe that's not the point. I mean, I don't know. It's not for us to approve. It's us to suggest.
Well, I mean, there's a point in making it simple, and there's a point in making it effective and useful. Mm-hmm. So, both of those are goals that we have here. So
Agreed.
We're just trying to put the middle point in there, figure out where to draw the line between simple and effective. All right, so what are the choices that we have? This is a choice. We have the choice of something related to the lot coverage or sizes for different size lots so far.
600 square feet disturbed. I'm okay with that, even though it seems excessive for the rural communities. And maybe we'll get some feedback when this starts to go public. These numbers can be bounced around. But then I feel really good about 300 square feet, or if you're on less than half an acre, 600 square feet for anything more. This is a single math equation, easy to know the lot size and say, okay, how much finished impervious surface are you going to have? And then have one other caveat that if you are exceeding 50% lot coverage, even in a district that allows 60 or 70% lot coverage, if you're over 50% of your lot coverage and you're adding, whatever, impervious surface, you need stormwater plan.
So greater than 50% lot coverage. 50% of maximum allowed lot coverage.
No, 50% of lot coverage. That's two different things. And I maybe we should hear from other folks, but I'm saying 50% of the lot period. There's
well, your lot coverage number, every district has a lot coverage number.
Right.
So mostly they're either 50% or 60%, or except for Jolena Court, which is,
90, something like that.
And rural is 30.
It's written differently for Jolena Court. Their lot coverage is given as a percentage of the developable land, and half of their property is not developable. So you already have to cut it in half. And we've given them like 90% lot coverage of the developable land, which, since they have half land that's not developable, that you cut that in half.
So the majority of the lots in the town, or at least land-wise, are in the AR, and the AR is at 30%.
Right. So they wouldn't necessarily be impacted by the 50% lot coverage, because they would be impacted by the 600 square feet of new impervious surfaces, which is a big garage. But if you have a district, and this harkens back to the district option we were bouncing around, if you have a district that allows greater than 50% lot coverage, and you are exceeding that 50%, then you have to have a stormwater management plan.
You can't exceed the lot coverage, the maximum lot coverage. You can't exceed it.
I know that. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So it would only impact those high density districts that already have lot coverage allowances greater than 50%, which are the ones that are going to be the most impactful on their neighbors.
Yeah, so they're like 60%.
Right.
The village neighborhood are 60% lot coverage.
And if you get up to 50% of your lot is impervious, you should have a stormwater plan.
And you don't think that's going to be captured on the small lots by your 300 square feet of new impervious? Or your 600 square feet if it's over, a half acre?
Yeah.
I kind of think that's going to be captured already by that number, but I have to think about that. Trevor?
Just for the construction levels phase, I think 600 is kind of low. I think if you made it...
We're for the disturbed land. Okay, you're talking about disturbed land.
Disturbed land. I think one of the proposals, or at some point, from at least one that I'd written, and I think one of the ones you'd had, was that all projects need to follow the low risk handbook, but we're talking about which ones have to put their practices on the site plan that's submitted with the application. I think 600 is a little too low. I think the ones that actually need to put in general, if they're not that, over 2,000 square feet of disturbance, it's generally just going to be silt fence and some stabilization. If the slope is still at 15%, where it triggers it being on the plan, but if it's just the total disturbance, if it's a flat driveway being put in across a field, or like anything below 15%, I feel like I think it could be higher. And really, if most of the stuff that's going to actually come up on the enforcement level is going to be like something happens, the neighbor complains. So if everyone has to follow low risk handbook. If something happens and they're like, hey, you're supposed to be putting silt fence up here, put your silt fence up. Okay. Or even if it's on the plan and they don't do it, something happens, they come and look at it, put your silt fence up. Either way, I think 600 is too low to make extra things be put on the plan. as long as they're aware that they're supposed to be following the plan, and their slopes are 15%, it's kind of they're pretty low risk, especially if it's not near waterways. That's just on the construction side, in my opinion.
And I believe the way it is written now, which we'll look at when we get into the permitting section, is they can either explain, if they are over this baseline threshold, they can either explain it or portray it. So it doesn't necessarily
so it's not that
be shown on this, but they have to have a plan for it. It has to be either in the plan or in the site plan, or the way the subdivision regulations are written, there's a plan and a plat. So they talk about them separately with different requirements in each. And so it can be in the plan, it can be discussed without necessarily being on the site plan. That's going to be up to the zoning administrator, if they think it has to be on the site plan. If it can be explained, people can say, well, we're going to have a silt fence below the disturbed land. Yeah,
in this sense, when I said site plan, I mean the one that the zoning administrator is looking at, not the DRB's site plan, not that formal one. So it's more
any drawing.
Yeah, I just think that in general, if they just apply to all projects, then if there's a problem, someone then has to fix it. But you don't have to explain it or show anything if it's less than 15%. And I think 600 is too low. You can't really do a lot with 600 square feet. And in general, most of the time, the problem is going to be your problem, especially if you're have a large parcel. Like, you just messed up your own slopes and your own construction area if you're not near a waterway. So I'm just saying, in general, if you're not near a waterway, I'm not as concerned that you eroded your bank, your site, and everything got turned into mud.
So what's your number that you're suggesting?
Probably 2,000. But then you're supposed to be following Laura's handbook. So if there is a problem, then that becomes something that could be brought up with the person who has the permit, saying you're supposed to do these things. Put your fences up. It's in this manual. Here's where you do it.
Well, we don't want there to be a lot of problems. We don't want.
I don't know if there will be any problems, but yeah, sorry.
We don't want there to have to be a lot of enforcement. We just want people to have to think they have to do these things. But okay, so you're suggesting a bigger number there, and whatever with the impervious. I don't know.
Not with the impervious. It's just purely for the construction phase.
Okay.
Just that if you're below 15%, you're fairly low risk for having issues. The stabilization is fairly simple at that point, and it doesn't take anything complicated to put grass seed and straw down.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, even with 600 square feet, you might need to do that if it's a tiny lot. But all right, Chelsea. And then we'll move on.
Well, I was just going to suggest that we move on. So you're. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was that?
She's suggesting we move along. All right, so we'll put these several proposals down, and if you can try to get more information for your idea, that would be great, so we can make sure that we finalize it next time. All right, so the next thing that we have to decide is about the professionally designed plan. Do you want there to be a threshold or a set of parameters above which a professionally designed stormwater management plan is required? What has been proposed here is all projects with 10,000 square feet of new impervious, which is like half the size of the ones that require state permits. And my question about the conditional use and the permitted uses that are not exempt is that, and Keith, you can help me with this, as I read the current requirements, you don't actually have to have a site plan review for a conditional use or a permitted non-exempt. It says that a separate, and this is one of the things that will make you crazy about this document, is that it's very ambiguous. It says a separate site plan review is not required, but you still have to go along with the parameters that are set up in the site plan review section. So the question is, are they required to have a site plan, or are they not required to have a site plan?
Are you talking before the DRB?
I am saying in our current zoning, in the section conditional use,
Yep.
it says conditional use is not required to have a separate site plan review.
Correct.
All right?
Yeah.
But conditional uses still have to abide by the site plan review requirements. So the question is a site plan review required for a conditional use or not?
Well, they're joined at the hip per the language.
Yeah,
So
well, that's not good enough. It's a yes or no to the answer.
It's a concurrent review. They're not separate reviews. If you are not on the exempt list for site plan review, then you need to go to the DRB for site plan review only.
But it's not a site plan review. You do not need a separate site plan review, is what it says.
Right. If you're under if you are a CUR. You don't, so that's what they're stating there. They're joined at the hip. They're sutured together.
Well, it's ridiculous because then we can't tell whether a site plan review is required or is not required. So we can't, and the reason it's a concern, and what brought it up was your discussion of Wild at Heart and the yoga studio, which you said doesn't really need a site plan review because it's in a building. There's no adjustments that are being made to the site. So to me, that suggests that there are conditional uses that don't require a site plan. So if we are going to say a site plan is required for subdivisions, PUDs, conditional uses, and permitted non-exempts, that's not really quite correct because conditional uses don't all require a site plan. They don't require a site plan review.
Review, correct.
So we don't want to say that they are in the list of things that require site plan review by the DRB. They are not in the list of things that require site plan review by the DRB.
I guess I interpret that differently because the thing where you're saying that they don't require a separate site plan review, that's just to expedite. It's essentially for efficiency. It's to combine proceedings and expedite the review process. Site plan review standards say, in order to expedite the review process, conditional uses are not subject to separate site plan review under section 5.5. However, all conditional uses shall also meet site plan review standards and conditions. So this is essentially like...
Yeah, so they probably should say when applicable.
It's a language problem, but to me, it is doesn't. I mean, we can. So my question here, I guess, is if the DRB doesn't get a site plan to do a conditional use review, what are they even reviewing? No, they need a site plan, but what they don't need is site plan review.
I mean, I think a conditional use review is essentially a site plan review, just it's essentially a site plan review that's just in addition to being a site plan review, it is a site plan review that's reviewing a conditional use.
Yep.
And because it's a conditional use, they need to go through that site plan review to ensure that it's going to meet all the conditions. But I guess it's weird wording, I guess.
It's horrible wording. And, so with a PUD or a subdivision, do you actually have a separate procedure that is a site plan review procedure? No, you just have parameters that they have to meet, right?
Correct.
They don't have to go and have another hearing that is called the site plan review. I mean...
Well, the PUD has its own standards, and it is reviewed under a CUR, or it's reviewed under a subdivision. And we shouldn't even be talking about PUD right now, come to think of it. honestly.
Yeah. So anyway, we just have to write it in a way that we're not saying the projects that need a professionally designed plan are ones that are subject to site plan review by the DRB, unless we change the word, the way it is written in the current regulation, which is that CURs need site plan review. I mean, it's not a separate review for anybody, right, Keith? I mean, there's not a separate site plan review procedure.
Well, there are standards within the site plan review, so I guess that could be considered a procedure there. I mean, I'm looking it up again now. Bear with me. Yeah, so those are exceptions. Yeah, this is really poorly written. You are correct. But Chelsea, you are right. We make that same determination that site plan is for expediency. We combine them.
But it still brings up the question of that building, the building that you talked to me about, the Wild at Heart and Yoga Studio building, where you said, oh, it's a conditional use, but they don't really need a site plan because there's no alteration to the site. There's no disturbed land. There's nothing. There's no increase in impervious surface. Why would they need to have a site plan review? So to me...
They still technically had a site plan review. There just was nothing to review for the most.
Well, yeah.
It's the exception and not the rule, to be honest with you. But, you know, it is an exception that is something that actually happens a little bit more frequently than infrequently.
Yeah.
But,
well, so at least if we could clarify, you know, clear the language up in here, it would be happy. And then the question is, do we want to require a professionally designed plan for stormwater, for erosion and stormwater for all projects reviewed by the DRB, whether or not they say they require site plan review, but all projects that are going to be reviewed by the DRB? Is that what we want to say? And also, do we want to have a professionally designed plan for all projects with 20,000 square feet of disturbed soil or on 15% slope? Now here we're just talking about erosion control. The 20,000 square feet of disturbed soil is like half what the state requires. So we're capturing half the projects for a professionally designed plan. If it's less than 20,000, you can do your own by looking at section 6.17.
yes.
Are these the thresholds that we want? So Keith, you're okay with those thresholds?
Yeah, I mean, those are the ones that have been around for a while. Yes.
Yeah. Trevor?
My only, I guess, comment is on the slope part is that the low-risk handbook covers slopes up to 50% with multiple different solutions. So lowering the threshold, requiring a professional plan, then adds burden on the applicant. Having it higher would reduce their burden, but then create more burden on the zoning office. So this is a trade-off thing. So it's kind of like, what does the zoning office feel they have the capacity to handle and want to figure out from the low-risk handbook versus what do they want to put on the applicant paying money to hire an engineer? Beyond that, I think 15 to 50% somewhere in there would make sense. And it really comes down to what does the zoning office want to decide. They're not going to make the call on trying to figure out if what they propose makes sense or not. That's it. Thanks.
20% is not the standard. 15% is the standard pretty much throughout Vermont, at least. I know in New York it was that way. In Virginia, 15% is pretty much the standard. We're pretty high, to be honest with you. With the amount of slopes we have, I think it should be dropped to 15. I agree it would be a little bit more of a burden based on the current conditions of the way it's written, I should say. But I mean, water quality is the issue here. As far as the zoning office, what we can handle down to 8%. It's not rocket science when it comes to disturbance. So I think we're in pretty good shape there.
So 15% is what the other towns have, which is what seemed to be appealing. And also thinking about the hillsides, as you mentioned before, Trevor, the hillsides where it is, it could add up for different people who might be working at the same time.
Yeah, I'm more just trying to decide what thing could you easily reduce the burden on for the applicant and hiring an engineer, which is that the low-risk handbook does cover all of the ways to manage the slopes. And if you're requiring them to at least put it on the plan anyway, but they don't hire an engineer, there would be something in place to handle the slopes disturbed over 15% up to 50%. There's more complicated things that apply once you can't use grass. And then you grass with different various stabilization nettings and the different methods. But I'm just trying to provide the option, or the lowest handbook does handle different situations and with different ways to do it up to 50%. So in theory, an applicant could just look at the book and put down where they're going to what they're going to use from the lowest handbook on the slopes. But I'm also fine with the lower 15% because that then doesn't require the applicant to figure it out. The zoning office doesn't have to check it, presumably, as long as the plan that's prepared is actually specific to the site. I've seen multiple EPSC plans where they just take the same pre-made diagrams and paste them on the sheet and don't provide stabilization methods for most of it because they just refer to the low risk handbook to manage everything. The state doesn't require specific practices on a low risk site. Like if you disturb over an acre and you're under 5, you don't require a moderate level permit or individual permit. They just say follow the risk handbook. Here's the plan of it. It's roughly limits of disturbance and silt fence. Everything else is just sort of left to the low risk handbook and the construction person. So if we're specific that they need to show them on the plan, then I think that's good because it doesn't, then it will actually tell them that they need to do these types of stabilizations on these areas where the slopes are more severe. I think that's important. I don't personally care who puts it on the plan though, whether it's an engineer or the applicant, because it's all pulled from the low risk handbook. Thanks.
Okay.
Were you saying 50%, Trevor, or 15?
50.
50.
50. The low risk handbook has. I'm not saying that that's the best idea, but I'm saying the low risk handbook does have management things in it for slopes all the way up to 50%.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, there's a prohibition of 35 in the town, but yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, Mark or Chelsea, do you have anything you want to say about this one?
Sure. As far as EPSC goes, I think that I would word it not only development on, but creation of slopes. And I would not necessarily, I honestly don't know if I would decrease it from 20. If we want to not sort of do, what is it called? Landslide sort of dial back things, make regulations less strict. If we don't want to make regulations less strict, I would probably leave it at 20. I understand that some other towns are doing lower than that, but especially for EPSC, I think that is a unnecessary burden on applicants. If we are going to require all projects to follow the low risk handbook and then at a certain threshold show what they're going to do on their plans, I think that people can adequately handle slopes up to 20%. The low risk handbook has standard stabilization, sediment control is the things that we've been talking about, like silt fence and things like that. Sediment control isn't as governed by slopes. It is what it is. You choose a method of sediment control. But slope stabilization, the low risk handbook and industry standard for engineers is that up to 1:3, you can stabilize a slope with grass seed and hay, straw. And so I don't think people should have to hire an engineer for who knows how much money for the engineer to draw up a plan that says, put grass seed and straw in these areas. That's just absurd.
I agree.
like over 1 on 3, which 1 on 3, to be clear of what I'm talking about, is 33%. So like up to a 33% slope, industry standard, you know, putting aside other site conditions, is just like prepping the soil and then doing grass seed and mulch. And so I definitely don't think in the mindset of not making this more burdensome for folks. And I don't think I would dial that back. If anything, like if we want to, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. And that's what I would say.
I agree.
So you would be in favor of sticking with the 20%?
Mm-hmm.
Mark.
Yes. Yeah, I think for erosion control work, it's not the long-term picture. There's a lot more flexibility and minimal potential impact.
But everybody's on board with, if you leave it at 20%, they are still required to have a professionally designed plan.
If it's over 20,000 square feet.
No, I'm talking about slope.
Or over 20% slope.
I don't know. I'm
I'd
conflicted.
even raise it.
Yeah, I know. I'm conflicted. Honestly, am I unmuted? Oh dear. Yeah.
We hear you.
So while I definitely want responsible management of stormwater and sediment control and all of these things, I don't think that the requirement to achieve that needs to be through a pathway of professionally engineered plans. As Trevor was mentioning, if you take a look at most professionally engineered plans for EPSC, unless they're designing something really like complicated, like retaining wall or something like that for stabilization, because somebody has created slopes that exceed 1 on 3 and it needs to be stabilized in a different way, unless that's happening, like those plans that these engineers are coming up with are literally like my 10-year-old could draw them. They're not complicated. They're not site specific. They all have the same plug and play, you know, prepare the soil with topsoil, put down grass seed, put down mulch. Like it's all the same exact stuff. And that seems like if engineered plans are as much as people are saying they are, I think that's a burden we don't need to put on people. My opinion would be to increase it, sort of the blanket number of like, no matter what, no matter your site conditions, you then need an engineered plan, would be to increase it at least to that 1 on 3, that industry standard of 1 on 3, which is like up to that point, it's easily managed with, you know, grass and this. But I say that with the caveat of I would increase the blanket slope thing, but then my preference would be to then add things that would kick you into stuff for, like, if you're, for example, if you are developing within a wetland buffer, maybe those, you know, if there's anything we feel that needs greater protection from sediment and pollution and runoff, then rather than having everyone have this blanket for slope, make the slope blanket higher and then add things for the stuff that we think needs greater protection, like maybe rivers and streams or something like that. That's kind of my thoughts.
Okay.
I like the idea of that, but it sounds like it's getting a lot trickier.
Yeah, you're adding a whole bunch of new, you're going to have a new, you know, you want to try to keep it simple. Okay, all right, we'll have to work on that one, I guess. And what about the 20,000 square feet? Chelsea and Mark, did you want to talk about that? Are you okay if it's over 20,000 square feet, which is half of the state requirement? Oh, no, 20,000 square feet. No, it's an acre of disturbed, so yeah, that's half.
A little bit less than half.
A little bit less than half, yeah. 43,580 or something is the acre. So are you okay with that if it's over that amount of disturbed soil?
And then change that greater than 20% slope is what it's sounding like.
Yeah, bounce the slope up for sure.
Or leave it.
And 20,000, you know, if it's, I wouldn't want to go any lower. That's for damn sure.
It's a good amount of disturbance.
It is. It's a half an acre of disturbed soil.
Right.
That's just during the EPSC phase.
Yeah, and if that's on your slope, then I don't know. Well, anyway, Trevor?
So just to clear, I don't think 1 on 3 is, I think that's too high. I would just go with 25% slope because it gives a buffer. Either leave it at 20 or 25% slope. So just in general, I don't always agree with Chelsea, just so you know. I think 20% leave it there or go to 25%. Then there's some room where you whether know what's at 33% or I think it's too close. I think 25% is, if you're going to potentially reduce the burden on hiring someone, 25% I think would make more sense than going up to the maximum you can do with grass seed and straw.
You're going to pay for that at 9:30.
And people...
I mean, I have to be honest with how I feel.
Agree.
I
think you get a good point.
She knows that this is how I feel. Anyway, so
the DRB would appreciate it if we didn't change it, because then that's one less thing that we're changing. So that's one thing if we left it at 20. And also it allows room for people not to really do what the book says, which is going to happen. But anyway.
I mean, it just means that they still have to put it on the plan themselves anyway, though. This is only to hire the engineer to put it on the plan for them.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's on the, and I just want to be clear that if someone hires the engineer, I want it to be a site-specific plan where they actually show at those slopes what they're going to do, and it's not just the general grass things, which is what I've seen on many plans. And then there's the slopes don't actually meet the criteria for grassing things. And then that's the only thing that I want to make sure is that the site plans, whether they're applicant prepared or engineer prepared, need to match the actual site that's being done. That's it. Thanks. And I think 20,000 is good.
Yeah.
So the current limit is 20%?
20, yeah.
And
most of these other towns have 15%. So, you know.
Leave it be.
Williston's flat. So in general, other than one area, so like I'm trying to take into account that Richmond's fairly hilly. And if you go down to 15%, a lot of properties are going to be kicked into requiring an engineered plan that probably don't necessarily, I don't think would need one. But this does make it easier, though, on the zoning office. They don't have to check the things up front or work with the applicants to come up with the plan. That's one thing that I wanted to point out at the beginning, was that lowering it does make it easier for the zoning office. And if that's something that does need to happen, then that maybe is why this would make sense to lower it also. I don't have an opinion either way. It's a burden on one person or the zoning office. So someone's got to be working on this somehow.
Yeah, my concern is that you're promoting development on slopes greater than 15%, which we are now. But if you're going to kick it up to 25, I'll definitely not support that. That is basically promoting development on those slopes. Whereas when you know you have to get a professional plan, you'll make a plan that will not require a professional plan. You'll not disturb these slopes. So that's my concern there. And I do appreciate it being, Trevor, what you're saying about the zoning office. I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about water quality. That's the whole thing here in my mind. That's the way I've been trained. I'm a trained geologist. I've been a conservationist all my life. And E&S, I'm a CPESC. I know that 20% slopes are extreme, not extreme, but they're difficult, but they're manageable. Grass and hay is not all you need. You definitely would want some erosion control matting on those types of slopes. So there's a whole host of things that can happen here, but that's my concern. If you're going to increase it from 20 to 25, that's a major concern of mine, because I believe that that's promoting development on slopes that we should not have development on. especially in the town, especially with what's left over in the town, guys. There's hardly anything developable anymore.
Well,
Just a
all
thought.
right, I definitely back that approach, keeping it at 20%. I do have a technical question though. Is that 20% slope? What is the distance that it has to be for 20%?
It's just rise over run.
I know,
So-
but I mean, like you could have like a really flat area and then a steep bank for like 10 feet. That might be 25%, and then it levels out again. Is there like a length that
No,
it has
there
to be
isn't.
over 20%?
No,
Or is it
no, there's no
any point in the
specificity.
measurement?
Correct. There's no specificity to that. It's a blanket 20%. You need a plan.
If any disturbed land is going to be on the slope of over either 15 or 20% or whatever, then you need the professionally designed plan. If any part of the disturbed land is on that slope.
Even if it's only over 20% for like 10 feet.
Yeah, in theory, yeah. We would
I tried to
ask.
figure out how to.
All right, that's
sorry.
industry standard. I'm not going to fight it. I don't like it.
We would ask them to adjust. I mean that's really what it comes down to. I mean, you have to adjust.
If you're creating a retaining wall, like say you're doing a cut or you're doing something, you're going to build a retaining wall, you then automatically created a slope over 20%. And so then you have to get an EPSC plan for the retaining wall that you're already planning to put in, which we don't require like any kind of inspections or anything or engineered anything. Where like some places, once you get over 4 feet with a retaining wall, you'd want an engineer to make sure it's not going to fall down on someone. But
we wouldn't require a permit for that. If you're
right.
I mean, we'd require a permit for the wall, but we wouldn't require a professional plan for developing that one-on-one slope.
Yeah, that I'm just trying to like figure out. You could easily create a straight up and down wall because you're going to build a wall there, like a dirt. So I'm just trying to like I try to figure out a way to like quantify like at what point does the slope, if you're doing 20%, over what period what distance do you actually care about it? It's too like difficult to logistically figure out how to even apply that.
I mean, I think it's by design. To be honest with you, that there is no number there. Just the percentage of the slope. Because if you want a driveway to go through a 20% slope, well, that's not a good thing. I think that's by design. I didn't write this, but I mean, in the same logic, if you built a basement cellar, when you have a hole in the ground, well, you're 1-to-1 right there. You don't necessarily need to have a professionally designed plan for that. And I know that's not what you're saying, Trevor. I just
I don't want to like inadvertently make it worded that it would require one, even though that's not the intent behind it. And so this is this, I don't know. I was trying to I'm trying to come up with ways to not burden applicants with doing things when we can do so safely. And this is one where I tried to figure something out, and there's no easy way to do it. Even like what if you're building a walking path? Does it matter if it's 2 feet wide versus a driveway that's 12 or 15 feet wide? It's too hard to actually figure it out though. Like there's no easy way to apply that onto a project.
There's a in Washington County and I digress here, in New York, the last page of their zoning regulation says when all else fails, use common sense. That is literally what it says. So obviously you can't apply that, unfortunately.
Okay, one more from Chelsea and then we'll move on.
So we're talking about this, and I just wanted to raise with you, Virginia, and potentially Keith or whoever, I guess. I don't know what we want to do about it in regards to, we're talking about slopes, we're talking about EPSC plans. Part of an EPSC plan and part of the low risk handbook is slope stabilization, because in order to keep a slope from eroding and creating sediment and negatively affecting water quality, stabilization is a big part of it. And so that's sort of the final step in all of these things, whether they have a professionally designed plan or not. Sure. However, I wanted to point out in what we're talking about, because we're talking about slopes and we're talking about this or creating that, I just wanted to point out that if we are going to blanket require compliance with the low risk handbook, the low risk handbook, as I said, has sort of, there's things it designs for, right? Slopes up to 1-on-3 or 33%. It's grass and mulch. Above that, it's either erosion control matting, which is different than netting. Matting is a different product, or riprap. However, that also has its limits. And so like the low risk handbook is going to throw people into, if you're over 1 on 3, you need to either use matting or riprap. And if you exceed 1 to 1.5, I believe, is where the low risk handbook cuts it off, then you need to look at other solutions such as a retaining wall. So are we prepared to codify that? And like how do we, I don't know. I just wanted to sort of raise that because this is part of EPSC is stabilization, and that means that folks are going to have to stabilize these things in different ways than we currently require them to.
All right, well, I mean, I'm inclined to leave it at the 20% and discourage development on slopes.
And prohibit at in essence 1 on 3. At that point, we're literally prohibiting it already in zoning.
35% slope,
Yeah.
we're prohibiting, yeah.
The 1 and 3 is 33%. So
Yeah, well, let's leave it at 20 and
yep. Yeah. Don't go any higher. That's where it is. That's where we stop.
20,000 square feet.
Yep.
The state has proposed at one point to raise or not allow towns to prohibit development on slopes in the past couple of years. Just so that 35% prohibition the town has could potentially get removed by the state. It never made it to a bill that passed, but that's been brought up just so that like if we require, I think it's good to require low-risk handbook across the board because we may lose the 35% prohibition at the state level at some point, potentially.
I remember.
Yeah, okay, well, we'll wait and see if that happens, I guess. It's been there for a while, so.
Well, the prohibition also, the way that it's handled and the way it's worded is that's on developing on slopes that are that. It doesn't stop people from creating slopes in excess of 35%.
Well, that certainly is silent in our regs. Creation of slopes. That does bring up a conundrum, doesn't it?
That's what I was just saying. I think Virginia might have misinterpreted me, is that the low risk handbook talks about how you would stabilize those slopes that are in excess of 35%. Right. Because in our zoning, we can't develop on slopes that are 35% or greater. However, you can create a slope of 35% or greater. And so the only thing that would kick in on that situation is this low risk handbook that we're requiring. And the low risk handbook says from essentially for a 35% slope, you would need riprap or matting. And then, do you see what I'm saying? Like I'm saying that I'm saying that a section of our regs that is currently silent will no longer be silent once we codify the low risk handbook.
Probably a good thing.
Well, it is already. Well, no, you're right, Chelsea. I'm saying we already required to give them that, but we're not forcing them to do anything at this point. Well, we are now, but not codified. So.
And also, I mean, the way it's written right now is that you need to follow section 6.17, right. I think, or the low risk handbook. So anyway, and if you think we ought to have something in there about creating slopes, Chelsea, we could put that in. That's a whole sort of different topic.
I would agree, but I think you have to give a distance. Like literally, like you said, I know it's common sense, but you build a retaining wall for something and all of a sudden you've created more than 35%. But if it's less than 10 feet long, then it's a retaining wall and not a monstrous sloping steepness hill, right? So I mean, if it's more than 35% over 10 feet, well, maybe then we should eliminate that. But retaining walls wouldn't be more than 10 feet. And, we gotta enable that, even though there is I love that common sense caveat, but how do you codify that?
Well, do we want to say that if you are going to create a slope, you have to follow the low risk handbook for soil stabilization? I mean, we could put that in if you're going to create it.
I'm trying to figure out what project would do that, though. I mean, I guess if you're cutting a road in for a subdivision, but I think that's such an outlier. I mean, it's a possibility, but it really is an outlier. Hey, I want to put a big old. You want to put a pile of dirt on your property that's 40% slopes because you want to do a mini ski run. I can see that. Yeah.
I don't know.
Sorry, I'm thinking out loud here, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think we should leave it fairly simple and see how it pans out over time, and maybe make it more specific after that.
Well, yeah.
All right, so let's go on to the next one. So now, what are the threshold for professionally designed stormwater management plan?
Being that now the state requires half an acre.
Yeah, so the state requires half an acre, so this is half an acre of new impervious surfaces, to keep it simple, to keep, the problem with the matrix was it's too complicated, too cumbersome, too difficult. So going back to the way the state makes its thresholds, they make it about new impervious surface or total impervious surface, new plus old, etc. So the other proposal was based on Trevor's idea of providing to applicants some kind of a pictorial explanation of how to do something like a retention pond and how to figure out how much you need and blah, blah, blah. So in that case, if we were to do that, to provide, along with the permitting, provide, here are some plans, here are things you can do as an applicant. If you want to do the math and do the digging, then if you refuse to do that or you decline to do that, then you would also need a professionally designed plan. So what do you all think about that? And the next question to which this relates is that what we have right now in this new draft of 6.17 is that all site plans above the baseline, the 600 or whatever square feet, will be required to show how the plan how the project plans to intercept and treat stormwater first flush by infiltration, filtration, and retention by using strategies from the Low Impact Development Guide. So you have to think that the applicant is going to be able to do that, and maybe they're going to do that with these pictorials that we're going to give them.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Stop.
Or reference.
Just my phone cutting in.
In Siri, she listens to everything.
Oh, it's dangerous, man.
I just wanted the time, that's all. I thought I was asking her something. We should see what AI thinks about all this.
I mean, to Trevor's point.
Which one?
The one about whether it's professionally engineered.
Okay. We're talking about stormwater.
Yes. And we were talking in the last meeting, and Keith has had some time to mull that over, but he was, I think if I was right, you were under the impression that the zoning administrator would be able to assess the capacity of a stormwater plan for some pretty good size areas. Now, nowhere up to 10,000 square feet. I get that, but I mean, really, I think this is kind of that question that I want to rely on Keith's expertise and general knowledge of zoning administrators as to whether what you think the threshold is that your office would feel competent in approving.
I think 10,000 is fine.
Really?
Yeah, I do, because it is so infrequent that that's going to happen.
But you think that if somebody, and honestly, I mean, I can't imagine anybody building a 10,000 square foot building that isn't agricultural.
Well, I mean, it could be a driveway.
Yeah, that'll be
Yeah.
parking, driveway,
Definitely.
building.
But
Can you show Mark what I made? Because I didn't send it to him.
No, we didn't send it out because you didn't answer my question about whether you wanted it out there or not. So I didn't give it to anybody.
Oh, I thought I said you could send it. Sorry. Can you show it to Mark now then?
No, Keith doesn't have it. Does he have it?
I might have it in an email.
I still think 10,000. If you're good with 10,000, then let's leave it at 10,000. And
No, but what Trevor has is a document that shows you how to do. What did you have there? Was it a level spreader or something? I'm not sure what it was.
It was a retention area, I think. It was
Stone retention.
yeah,
An infiltration bed. I mean, I stole that entire thing from Salisbury Township in Pennsylvania and just removed all their stuff. And then that's why some of the stuff on there I don't think applies to what we want to do in the end. But I just sort of removed things and then that's what I modified.
No,
there was an example of a best management practice.
Yeah, and
that
that's
would
their form that they
satisfy
use also.
that
They
the
do
applicant
5,000 square feet.
could do that would satisfy. And so the questions are, can the applicant do these things? And is that the only one, or are there a whole bunch of other best management practices that we could, give them and say, pick one of these. If you can do one of these, or your contractor can do one of these, then
There's a different
okay. It
email
doesn't
key.
have to be professionally designed.
Before that one.
It's before that one.
Yeah. There's other diagrams that I have from this. I mean, there's other towns in Vermont that also have diagrams on how to do different practices. And I mean, I think the whole thing I was trying to do is just take the worksheet that the place in Pennsylvania had, because it's pretty simple. You just put the numbers in, it tells you what you end up with, and then there's a diagram of what to build. And then they have
Yeah, I have a whole suite of things that I mean, all different things.
But the state has a bunch. There's tons of them available that we could just put in a book and be like, here, you can pick one. And then
So
not
the
have
question
to
is, do we think the applicant can do it? Do we think the zoning administrator, so we're talking about a single family home for the most part, or a duplex, that this is going to be not reviewed by the DRB, which would need a professionally designed plan. Is the applicant going to be able to do it? Is the zoning office going to be able to spend time helping people do it, if that has to be the case, or assessing it to see if it's correct?
I think if Keith feels that area is reasonable, and when you factor in driveways and that kind of thing, there's a lot of simple flat areas, and you've got some guidance on from the Vermont book. I don't want to be putting a ton of different stuff from all over into the book as examples, but we should have, if there's reference language you want to send them to, and have them say, well, this would do it if you want to build this, great. But I don't think we should be putting that into our zoning regs. If we can reference a specific book that is legitimate enough to satisfy those volumes that would be generated from stormwater at up to 10,000 feet, that's great. I think I love the idea of simpleness, and I think it can be done. and more importantly, Keith thinks it can be done, then let's do it. But I don't want to codify stuff. That sounds
I don't think, and I don't want to speak for you, Trevor. I don't think that that is the intent here. I think the intent is this is an information document that we would attach to a specific permit, and
right.
we would have,
Like you
and
have that
depending on what
resource.
it is, it's just it's like a document that you attach to the permit, depending on what the site conditions are and what the site conditions require. And it's not just that one that he had, but it works. It definitely works. It needs to be, shrunk down or whatever. But, here you go. Here's your permit. We've worked with you on this design up to 10,000 square feet, from 600 to 10,000 square feet. This is LID. This appears to be sufficient. I mean, if we're cruising in at 10,000 square feet of new impervious surface, that is a good amount of impervious surface.
Quarter acre.
Yeah, I mean that's
a long driveway.
That's going to be a commercial project most likely anyway. But like you say, yeah, a driveway, yes, and we all know what the hell's going on with driveways around here. So
Yeah, so Mark, so you're okay with the 10,000 square feet of new impervious? They can do it themselves as long as they make a plan to install one of the best management practices from the LID guide. You're okay with that?
I am.
Okay.
Is everyone else?
It would probably
Chelsea?
be more than just one. It'd be many.
I was
There's a
gonna
lot of
say
different
is-
options.
Sorry. So what I was going to say is that I just, like I said before, I like the idea of less professionally designed plans. I, however, recognize that simply saying like pick one thing, like if somebody could say, "Yep, here's my rain barrel," like that's not adequate. That's not going to cut the mustard for 9,000 square feet of new impervious surface.
Correct.
So like it's not just choose A. It's like treat what we have decided you are going to have to treat, whatever thresholds we put to that. 1 droplet of water per minute, one half an inch of water per hour, whatever we decide, it has to be. And I think that's where the worksheets come into play, because then that helps people determine, because without having some sort of guidance worksheet, like people aren't going to have any concept or understand like what treats what water, what counts for how much of this or that. So I think that's where the worksheets come into play, is helping people to do this without having to get a professionally designed plan. The one thing I was going to say is sort of a spitball idea, again, to decrease the burden, not only to applicants not having to get professional plans, but perhaps to this like middle, if we have a middle gray area for like the zoning office. Is there any potential in having like something where the zoning office could have the town's engineer? I don't know if you guys work with the town's engineer ever. I know in our zoning regs, there's all sorts of stuff in it about like the zoning office is allowed to have, the engineer review things. And like, I just don't know if you guys do that. My thought here in this particular circumstance is like, maybe it's super simple for the zoning office to like review up to 4,000 or 5,000 square feet of impervious. Like you guys have got that like down, you're really comfortable with it, good to go. But then maybe there's like a middle gray area where we're like, we don't really feel like they need a professionally designed plan. But after they design their own plan, there could be some sort of like stormwater review fee. I don't know, like $100, and then our town's engineer looks at it. I don't know. That's just one of my thoughts, because as we have just said, 10,000, good grief, get it together. 10,000 square feet of a new impervious surface is, while it's under the state's threshold, it's still a lot of freaking impervious surface area that like, I don't know. Anyway, just a thought about review and the capacity for the town to not require professionally designed plans, which I definitely like.
Well, it's a money thing, I mean, if you're requiring that a certain level is looked at by the town engineer, there will be a fee that will have to go to the client, to the applicant.
To answer your question, Chelsea, we have a line item for engineering in our budget for planning and zoning. That's usually associated with the DRB. Mm-hmm. And then we obviously can ask for technical fees. So there's a process through that we go through.
Yeah.
And a lot of the that line item is used on town projects also. So
Okay. Yeah.
So to answer your question, yes, I can certainly, without going through the select board, it's a line item on my budget that I can say, yes, if this is a complicated plan, it's out of our wheelhouse. Yeah, I think that we would be able to do that. We have yet to do that. I mean, we haven't come across that yet, but.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, we don't
or
have
you could
stormwater rates
change,
yet.
you could change the app, you could charge the applicant also.
Yeah, it's just a thought
You would-
on like maybe
You would have to have a policy about when to charge the applicant and when to not charge the applicant.
correct. And that's why I was thinking that there's this gray area, right? Like I was just throwing out the thought because it perhaps would accomplish multiple benefits of like less burden of review on the zoning office for projects that maybe are bigger, but not professional engineer plan bigger, but also helps people who are doing a bigger project not have to get a whole plan professionally engineered, which let's say a whole plan professionally engineered costs them $5,000, but a project review having the town's engineer look at self-drafted plans is only $500. I would really rather pay $500 to the town's engineer to look at my plans that I MacGyvered than I would like to pay my own engineer $5,000. You know what I'm saying? I guess that's my just a thought here.
Yep. And do you want to put the language in about if they decline to install the adequate BMPs, and that was what covers whether, if it's adequate or not is what the zoning administrator would have to decide, or get town engineer help. So you're okay with that language? If they don't want to do that, then they will have to get a professionally designed plan.
That are a really, really big rain barrel.
They make
Right.
some pretty big ones.
So maybe at 5,000 square feet,
Yeah, half of that.
there may be engineering fees applied depending on the complexity of the project.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Based on the judgment of the zoning administrator,
that's,
which could be dangerous in itself, depending on the zoning administrator.
Yes.
yeah, and it's a subjective
Yeah.
feature.
But either way, at least we're putting it out there and saying there could be fees applied if you want to try and wing it. And it's beyond the scope of, it's a difficult project. We may require, but, as long as we're telling them beforehand that this may require it, they always have the option to go back to the engineered option, and they can say, okay, don't do that. I'm just going to have it engineered.
Yeah, I'd like to see that in words. I'd like to see how that flows.
Yeah, we can try that. Well, let's try to get through a couple of more of these, just we don't have very much time.
Trevor has his hand up.
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to move right along.
Okay,
Trevor,
yeah.
what?
I was gonna say I would also support subsidizing the engineering fee if it's associated with a housing project. If there was some way to get the select board to allow that, like to review
Okay.
that they would, the town engineer or the applicant come up with something, and then it just gets reviewed by the town engineer. But that fee for the review, if it's associated with building housing dwellings of some kind, is covered by the town, and then it doesn't increase any burden on that end, at least for the applicant.
Ooh, I could hear people coming out of the woodwork on that one, Trev.
I'm just
Don't
trying to
want their
get
taxes.
housing built here.
Yeah, I hear you.
I mean, maybe if it's an affordable housing project, then you could justify that, but I don't think people are going to want to support individual developers who are making housing. I don't think the town is that interested in it, frankly.
That's fine with me.
Anyway. All right. So number 6, are we good with this concept of the first flush? Is that what we want to say, or do we want a number like 1 inch of initial rain or something? And do we want to require that all professionally designed plans shall be required to manage a 10-year storm by infiltration, retention, and or drainage systems,
As opposed to the 25 that's in the subregs.
as opposed to the 25? And so that means the first part, A, means that if it's a plan that the applicant designs, it has to show how it's going to intercept and treat stormwater. First flush, people have to know how to get to that number by infiltration, filtration, and retention by using strategies from the Low Impact Development Guide. Do we want to say that for all plans, including applicant?
For full disclosure, first flush does not have a number on it.
Yeah, it's just the general in the definition.
So how does an applicant decide what first flush has to be dealt with?
The first flush is self-explanatory.
It is not.
No, I think we need a number. I don't. I mean, 10-year storm, 25-year storm, all of those things have a number. They have something that people then know what the heck they need to do.
And 1 inch would be the one to use, which is approximately what the first flush is.
If you look up first flush, it kind of just depends on where and like what place is using that language. I think it's self-defined by places. One of the things that I looked up was that it is the first inch of rainfall, because that first inch of rainfall is what has the most contaminants in it, and that's why they're flush, meaning it's flushing out the trash and garbage. And so like they require you to retain that quote first flush of 1 inch on site, so that mucky, dirty, yucky stormwater is not the stuff that's ending up in the waterways. And so like everywhere it's something, we just need to decide what we want it to be here. So that's my comment for A. My comment for B is I am hesitant to roll back stormwater management when the whole reason we're designing regs right now is because as the town as a whole has decided stormwater is a major concern and a problem. And so if historically subdivisions have had to design for a 25-year storm, but we still have a problem, why would we decrease that is where I'm like in my mind, if we decrease that, we need to increase what we're making the rest of the town do to offset it and just make them equal. I don't know. I don't think it's wise to lower the amount of water we're requiring subdivisions to treat if they're already treating the 25 and everybody in town's like water is a huge problem.
Isn't that in conflict with putting a burden on a landowner though? Because if you're designing to a 25-year storm, your systems have to be larger, which in turn means more expense.
Oh, for sure. No, I understand that. I guess, like I said, my hesitation comes in this balance of like, if we're going to dial back subdivisions, and I'm not saying that, like, I'm not 100% blanket saying we shouldn't, right. But if we do, like, because let's compare it. I think a 25-year storm right now is like 4.6 inches of water. It's a lot. It's a lot of dang water. A 10-year storm is something like 3.4 inches of water. So like it lowers the amount of water those subdivisions would have to design for, which, okay, maybe we like that. But if we do that, do we want to then make the rest of the town, if subdivisions are designing for 3 inches of water, does the rest of the town really only have to design for 1? Like, where do we want to have this balancing act? Maybe we could use the argument that the rest of the town didn't have to design for any water before. So because we're making the rest of the town design for 1 inch, that gives us the overall capacity of the town as a whole that we do have some wiggle room. We could lower subdivisions to 10 instead of 25. You know, maybe that's the way we pitch it. I'm just thinking of like how this is going to look if we're like, hey, we need to design stormwater regulations for the whole town, and then every Tom, Dick, and Harry has to do stormwater stuff now. But then on the flip side, they're like, well, what the heck? I never had to do stormwater before for building my detached garage. Now I do, but then you're going to make this developer not have to treat as much stormwater. How is that fair? Do you see what I'm saying? Like I'm trying to figure out like the overall big picture.
Well, my comments would be that first flush does not require 1 inch, and it just requires first flush. It's an event. Just for clarification, all storms are based on a 24-hour period also. Just want to make sure everybody knows that.
Thank you.
What was the last thing I was going to say, Chelsea? Shit. Sorry about that. I'll have to come back to that. Oh, yes. It's the most important thing, the most salient thing in my mind is that I am not in support of putting a number on somebody who is a total neophyte to stormwater. I think that is way too big of a burden for somebody.
What do you mean?
They are not going to know what first flush means. They're not going to know how to measure.
How are they going to design to a 1 inch? I mean,
Yeah, well, I think it's a
just because you
problem.
don't understand what first flush is doesn't mean other people aren't going to understand it. It's a basic concept. It's an event.
Yeah, but we don't know what the volume is.
Or the time
point
frame.
is not
So
volume.
how do you design a system contain a first flush if you don't know the volume generated in a first flush?
Never mind.
It's an honest question. I get it. I'm a neophyte to all of this.
Please research first flush. That's what low impact development is all about. That's really.
I guess
I don't agree.
so so if I'm to follow that path, I'm just trying to think about this out loud. If it's an event and it's so if you're saying first flush is an event, it's 24 hours.
No, it's not. The first flush is exactly what it is. First flush, a storm event, first flush, and it has been dry for a while, and there's an accumulation of pathogens and dirt and all that other good stuff. It's not a measurable event.
Then I don't think
measure it. You can, but.
So how do you know, like, how long what if it starts like lightly raining and then it's heavier rain and then this heavier rain goes on for like 2 minutes or 20 minutes I mean, it's just an amorphous concept. It's a perfectly clear concept. It's just that it's impossible to work with.
No, it's not.
How do you quantitate it?
You qualify it. You don't quantify it.
I don't know. I don't know how anyone would prove that they're meeting that.
It's not a matter of meeting anything. You guys want to put a number on it so they meet it. You can't do that to a neophyte. That's what I'm telling you. From a administrative point of view, that is going to be a nightmare. For somebody who needs to put up a 1,000 square foot shed, all I'd be looking for in a 1,000 square foot shed would be a rain barrel or rain garden. I don't know.
I think you mean 100 square foot shed. 1,000 square foot shed is a really dang big shed.
That's a good shed. You're right. It is. That's a pretty good shed. You're right. But I understand. I mean, I live and breathe this stuff, and it's just from an administrative point of view. You start putting numbers on it, people are going to glaze. I'm telling you. Even if you're giving them sheets on how to do it, they say, "Why the hell do I have to do that?" That's an incredible cost.
Well, let me ask you this from something I'm familiar with anyways, is that I got a roughly 600 square foot garage.
Okay.
And if I wanted to build that, what kind of retention would I need to use to build a brand new 600 square foot garage for first flush?
For first flush, a rain barrel would do it. For first flush. That's the amount of water we're talking about. We're talking about cleaning up that first flush, making sure it doesn't get into the ground, or it gets into the ground and doesn't run off. That's what the rain barrel does. So the whole system that you deal with a first flush is a first flush collector. But
then you take that rain barrel and empty it out on your yard. You just dump it.
No. You have to understand how that works, though. You don't just dump in the dirty water into a rain barrel. It goes through a system first. It has a bobcock on it. So, I mean, it's not a very difficult concept. It's usually you're dealing it with gutters because most of the stuff is coming off of roofs. Now, if you have a driveway that's a hard surface, that's macadam, you have stone line trenches that would capture that water and treat it. It's not that difficult. We can design it at our level. It's when you start putting a 1 inch in there, and we got to now size these issues. It becomes incredibly difficult to manage.
How are people going to know about those things that you just even mentioned?
We inform them. It's the whole purpose of 617.
What do other towns that even have stormwater management plans use? Do any of them use first flush, or are there Because
Yes.
1 inch is kind of a tough thing, because you're right, it's not a defined like storm event issue. It's not a known
Well, it's
thing.
a calculation, and that's really what it comes down to. You know, it's a calculation that people are not going to understand. Whereas here it is, first flush. I'll explain it to you what it means, and this is what we're looking for. So my experience: Queensbury, Lake George, Saratoga Springs, Fairfax, Virginia, so on and so forth. First flush is in all those regulations. They talk about that ad nauseum, especially in Lake George. Lake George is ridiculous.
Really?
Not so
I
much
don't-
Vermont. rule.
Well,
Not in Vermont,
I just don't know how anybody will know once they've met I don't know how anybody will know when or if they've met this without having a amount on it. And further, I don't know how the town will apply it unilaterally if there's no thresholds and guidance of like, for a 100 square foot shed, a rain barrel of this size is big enough. For a 250 square foot shed, you can still do it with a rain barrel, but it needs to be of this quantity. Once you've got, or maybe you don't want a rain barrel because you think they're ugly. Okay, for your 100 square foot shed, you could do a dry well that's 3 by 3, 5 feet deep.
Right.
Like,
And by the way, you
we
can't
need
just dump it out on
something.
your lawn. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry,
like we
Jim.
just need something. Otherwise, people aren't going to know what it is they're doing or what they're putting on these quote self-designed plans, because we're trying to have self-designed plans so people don't have to pay the exorbitant fees for an engineer. But then furthermore, it just creates too much ambiguity and personal interpretation, the potential of not having unilateral sort of treatment and whatnot. I feel like we need some defined things, and maybe people don't like it being 1 inch. Maybe that just like bristles the feathers, but then perhaps we just decide for this size, it's this thing, or that thing. Maybe there's 4 treatment practices, and as the size goes up, your treatment practice size goes up, and here's what you need to do, and here's how you need to do it. I think that's sort of similar. I briefly looked at the worksheet that Trevor had done for the like retention type basin thing. And it's sort of that concept of like, okay, if your building is 10 by 15, that means it's this many square feet of impervious surface. That means you need a retention space that's this wide by this wide by this deep.
Right.
Easy. Like it's like super, like it's all laid out. People can find the information. They can know what they need to do, so they can know what they can need to expect. It's like neighbors also then have like clear, okay, I'm cool with this. Like my neighbor's gonna manage this much stormwater with this kind of thing, and like that's great because then it's not gonna flood my basement, especially down in the village where there's all these problems with promoting ADUs and secondary infill housing. I think folks knowing what's expected of them and what to expect of neighboring development that's going to happen is where we're going to have success.
Thank you. So Trevor sent me the model stormwater management bylaw from the city, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. Here's what they say about a stormwater management standard. Stormwater runoff from impervious surfaces exceeding 2,500 square feet, there's another number for you, and up to 1/2 acre shall be routed through one or more appropriate BMPs based on soils, precipitation, flow, pollutant requirements, and unique conditions. BMPs shall be sized and designed to capture 90% of the annual storm events or the first inch of rainfall. See simplified sizing tool for methods and calculations. So they even in their model bylaw have the first inch of rainfall as the first flush number. Trevor, and then we have to go after that. So time to wrap it up, but what?
So it looks like the Lake George currently uses actual numbers now because they do a flat 1.5 gallons of stormwater per every square foot of net increase in pervious area if it's managed on site. And they also do infiltration as a different amount. They have like a 2-page checklist for minor stormwater permits that apply at 1,000 square feet it created, and then do major permits at 5,000 square feet. But it's got different practices. It looks like they do actual numbers. This is at least from the Lake George Park Commission, which I'm assuming is Lake George, New York's thing, but
Yeah,
they appear to do that.
That's not the town. But
Yeah, I don't know the town, but they that one does, and I mean, I don't know. Anyway, I use the you can use the worksheet that I sent out too, which is one from Salisbury, Pennsylvania, and you just put in 1,000 square feet. It tells you the bed area size. It's 2 feet deep, 40% reduction because of the rock and size of it, and I think it comes out to 11 square feet total, 2 feet deep. So it's not that big for the 1,000 square foot shed that you like threw out as a example. Anyway, I think that's accurate. It said like 3 kids talking at the same time, so that took not a lot of time to do. That's it. Bye.
Okay.
So, one just to add on that, 1 inch stormwater on 600 square feet of impervious surface is 370 gallons. It's not a rain barrel, 55-gallon rain barrel or a 30-gallon rain barrel. 370 gallons in a 1 inch storm on 600 square feet of impervious surface.
I am not looking to treat that type of storm. I'm looking to treat first flush. And I could just talk until I'm blue in the face and, you know, people are going to look cross-eyed at me. It's just, it's a bit mind-boggling what's going on here.
No, I hear you, because that's the hazard level where the real dangers, you know, the pathogens, the contaminants that build up in the dust are far less than 1 inch of rain to flush out and be caught somewhere. But then we're not really saying that you have to contain that anyway. It's not like, okay, so you had your first flush, now you got to get your barrel pumped out by P&P Septic and have it treated at the treatment plant. So I hear what you're saying about the first flush and the toxicity of that, but it's not definable. So theoretically, if we say the first flush is a 1/10 of an inch, then that's 37 gallons.
Well,
I think we also need to, sorry, Mark, I don't want to interrupt you, but I know we're running into the end here and Virginia's looking to end. I think we need to also sort of take a step back and think about why we're writing these bylaws. I understand that we're thinking about water quality here, but we're not just. The feedback that we received during the town plan process, the people who have stepped up and are concerned about stormwater, they're not only concerned about the junky water that's hitting waterways. They're concerned about how this water affects the town infrastructure, the neighbors in the village. And the first flush is not what the folks in the village are worried about. They're worried about larger volumes of water coming onto their property from their neighbors and inundating their basements. And so we're not drafting bylaws for ourselves. We're drafting bylaws for the town of Richmond. And I think that that's important to me to sort of center our focus on and recognize that like the goals here are, in my mind, a little bit greater than that. And 370 gallons of water on a 600 square foot building. I mean, if you think about it, a 600 square foot building in town could be a 1,200 square foot 2-story ADU that gets added. And that 370 gallons of water needs to go somewhere. And so and 1 inch of water, we have rain events in Richmond frequently that are greater than 1 inch. So I think the burden of figuring out what the heck you're going to do with 1 inch of water isn't that, I don't think that's excessive to expect of people. If somebody builds a 1,200 square foot, 2-story ADU in town, that means they're going to have a 3-foot diameter, 7-foot deep dry well. That's it.
Okay, so clearly we're going to have to talk about this more and come up with some other ideas. I mean, Chelsea, I really agree that volume is an issue as well as the pollution issue. So, all right, so we'll work on these some more, and you can read over the way, especially the shalls and the shoulds in section 6.17. So these are things we're going to, last time, originally there were some shalls and shoulds, requirements and guidance. Then I changed it all to shoulds, so it was all guidance. Now I've changed some of them back to shalls, like this one about the first flush that we're clearly not all in agreement on. But that there will be a shall that is a requirement, an actual requirement has been put in there. So if you all can look at that for next time, we should work on these and come back on the 2nd of September. Does anyone have any other thing to add, or?
You can buy a 150-gallon rain barrel. They are available.
Okay.
They're kind of bigger than a regular barrel, but they do exist.
Yeah, but then you have to have something to do with that water, also.
It's one of the market. There are big. They don't really look like a barrel anymore, but they do exist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're 350-gallon totes, 550-gallon totes. There are all sorts of different systems.
So that, and I'll leave you with this, that 600 square feet of barrage that I have in a 1-inch storm would equal 50 cubic feet of water. So I would need to be able to have a dry well that can contain 50 cubic feet, or 374 gallons. So you're looking at 50 cubic feet is a lot bigger than a 50 gallons. That's 374 gallons. So I would need to be able to create space in a dry well to contain 50 cubic feet, not including the stone and rock that's already there. Either I build a retention pond that contains 50 cubic feet, which is, 5 by 10 by 1 foot deep, or 5 by 5 by 2 foot deep of empty space that can contain that much water. 5 by 5 by 2 feet deep, just for my 600 square foot garage, 20 by 30 garage.
So are you advocating for that or not? You're advocating not.
I'm understanding that that's the kind of thing as we try to quantitate volumes of containment. A 600 square foot garage, a 20 by 30 garage would require a swale or retention pond 5 by 5 feet deep, 5 by 5 feet wide, 2 feet deep. Go 3 feet deep, you get down to 4 feet. You know what I mean? I mean, that's the math. 50 cubic feet to contain 1 inch of stormwater runoff on only 600 square foot building.
Yeah, so
we talk about a whole new house. It's a lot bigger than the 20 by 30. So I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just trying to give you an image of what we're talking about possibly requiring to contain a 1-inch stormwater runoff, which isn't a 10-year storm or a 25-year storm.
Right. Okay. Well, let's take this discussion up again next time.
One last point I want to make is that if we're going to make self-engineered stormwater containment, it should match engineered, because the guy's going to try and do an engineered version, and then all of a sudden he's going to try and do a private one. All of a sudden he gets kicked up to an engineered perversion. All of a sudden, he has to contain 4 times the volume of water that we're saying a self-engineered volume containment is satisfactory. But just because he has to go to engineering, he has to go 4 times larger in volume containment. That's a significant burden. That's not the $5,000 you're spending on the engineer. It's also 4+ times the volume that he actually has to engineer for. Just a thought, just something to think. It's a big difference between self-engineered and engineered. If we're saying it's a 1-inch storm versus a 10-year storm, and we currently engineer for 25-year. Damn.
Yeah. I mean, and there's some confusion there because there was this one project recently on Browns Court. It's a duplex. It can't be less than 600 square feet. And they had to get, because it was a subdivision, an engineered plan. And the engineered plan for all the runoff from that house, actually just from the back of the house, because they thought the front of the house would run into the road, which the DRB accepted. They built a small retention pond. It was pretty small. I don't remember, Keith, I don't know if you remember the size of that retention pond, but it was like a little pool in the backyard. It was a very small pond, maybe 5 by 5 and a foot or 2 deep. It was not very big. And it was only half the runoff because it was from the back of the house. And the rest of it was just going to run off into the front. And the DRB said, okay, that's a 25-year storm. They were required to develop stormwater for a 25-year storm. So,
and that's crazy that just having it run off into the road, they're not liable for. Because
and there were neighbors
for that.
There were neighbors who complained down the road, down Browns Court, which runs downhill from the Jericho Road. There were neighbors downstream who complained that there was already a lot of water running in the road with storm events.
Oh, yeah.
So, there's some confusion about what's okay with a 25-year storm. The DRB seemed to say, well, it was designed by an engineer, so I guess that's fine.
They also said at the last meeting that they only really care about stormwater if neighbors complain.
Yeah, well, there were neighbors complaining, and they...
They meant if neighbors don't say anything, they don't really look at stormwater. That was what I took out of that.
Right.
And the only reason they made the Browns Court one was because neighbors did bring it up.
Just because it runs into the road doesn't mean that it's not runoff, though. That's insane.
Right. Well, the reason they required it was because our subdivision reg says a 25-year storm. You have to account for the stormwater from a 25-year storm. That's why they had to require it, because it happened to be a subdivision.
But they weren't.
The excuse of running into the road should not be the reason to reduce the volume of containment.
Yeah, it was weird. Anyway. So on that note, unless anyone has anything else to add about updates or other business, we'll take...
Would the chairwoman like to make a motion?
Sorry.
Yes, Mark will make a motion, and somebody will second it.
I'm sorry, Trevor was about to say something critical.
I was going to say that I think that the subdivision rules for what management means should be clarified to go along with what we mean by management, possibly yet. What does that mean? Infiltrate, evaporate, store, something? Because DRB has repeatedly said, we don't know what management means.
Yes.
Many times. So that might be something to attach to this, is that whether we reduce it from 25 to 10, we need to, I think, address that, because they continue to say they don't know what that means.
We'll definitely clarify that. We're going to put in those words about what exactly is needed, like infiltration, bioretention, blah, blah, blah. That's what we're talking about with management. So anyway, Chelsea, did you second the motion to adjourn?
Please.
Did Mark make a motion? If so, then
yes, he did.
The motion.
Let me finish it.
Mark?
So moved.
Okay, Mark made the motion to adjourn. Chelsea, are you seconding it?
I second the motion to adjourn.
Thank you. All right. So since I'm in favor of it as well, we are all in favor of it, and we will reconvene on the 2nd of September.
Au revoir.
Thank you, Keith. I really appreciate your perspectives. I do. I know it's frustrating. You're coming from a different place, and we're all kind of, well, at least
Everybody's heart is in the right place. Don't get me wrong. I have to look at it through the prism of administration. That's the way I look at it.
I respect that.
Everybody, please have a fabulous night. What's left?
Yeah, and we have to put that into context.
Right.
The administration.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Okay.
All
Thanks,
right.
everyone. See you in a couple.
Thank you all. Bring your ideas next time also, please. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.